I never expected to inherit anything from my grandfather Shannon, let alone his entire $3,500,000 estate. Growing up, he was the only one who truly believed in me, while my parents saw me as nothing more than a disappointment. When they cut me off at 18, telling me I was ungrateful and not family, my grandfather was the one who helped me rebuild my life. Now, at his will reading my estranged parents, suddenly appeared grinning with dollar signs in their eyes. "Of course, we will manage it for you," they said with fake concern. But they had no idea what was coming next. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from, and if you have ever had family members suddenly appear when money was involved. Do not forget to like and subscribe for more stories about family betrayal and justice served. My earliest memories are filled with weekends spent at Grandfather Shannon's beautiful estate. The sprawling property with its historic main house, guest house, and 12 acres of land felt magical to me as a child. The estate had been in our family for generations, purchased by my great-great-grandfather during the lumber boom. While other kids played video games, I learned to fish in the pond behind the main house, catching bass and catfish, while Grandfather Shannon shared stories about his own childhood. "The most valuable things in life cannot be bought, James," he would tell me, while showing me how to bait a hook properly. Remember that when you grow up. Grandfather Shannon was always teaching me practical skills. By the time I was 12, I knew basic woodworking, could handle simple home repairs, and could identify most trees and plants on the property. He had been an architect before retiring, and I loved listening to him talk about the buildings he had designed throughout the city. Buildings should serve people, not the other way around, he would say, while showing me his old blueprints in his study. A good architect thinks about how people will live and work in the spaces he creates. These moments created a bond between us that was completely different from the cold, distant relationship I had with my parents. Frank and Diane were successful investment bankers who viewed me more as an inconvenience than a son. Their careers always came first, and I learned early not to expect them at school events or birthdays. I still remember my 10th birthday when they promised to be home for my party. They had hired a party planner and invited all my classmates, but as the party time approached, my mom called to say they were stuck in an important meeting. Grandfather Shannon saw me fighting back tears and immediately stepped in, hosting the party himself and making sure I had a good time despite my parents' absence. "Your parents love you in their own way," he told me afterward, though I could see the disappointment in his eyes. "They just get caught up in things that seem important to them right now." My parents' materialism and obsession with appearances defined our home life. Our house was filled with expensive furniture and art that I was not allowed to touch. Conversations at dinner, when they were actually home, revolved around investments, business deals, and social climbing. As I grew older, Grandfather Shannon became my primary emotional support. While my parents missed every school play and sports game claiming they were too busy, my grandfather sat in the front row cheering me on. Our weekly dinners at his estate became my safe haven. He would ask about my dreams and goals, listening attentively in a way my parents never did. "You have a good eye for design, James," he said, when I showed him a school project where I had designed a treehouse. "You might have a future in architecture like your old grandpa." Those words of encouragement meant everything to me. While my parents pushed me toward finance and business, Grandfather Shannon recognized my creative interests and supported them. He shared stories about his career, the buildings he had designed, and the satisfaction of seeing something you created come to life. "There is nothing like walking through a building you designed," he would tell me, "knowing that people will live and work and create memories in spaces that came from your imagination." As I entered my teenage years, tensions with my parents grew. They could not understand why I preferred spending time with my backward-thinking grandfather instead of attending networking events with them. My interest in architecture was particularly frustrating to them. "Architecture is for dreamers," my father said dismissively during one particularly heated argument. "Banking is where the real money is. You need to be practical about your future. When will you grow up and think about your future?" my mother would add. Look at your cousin Tyler. He is already doing internships at top financial firms. The constant comparisons to my successful cousins who were following the paths my parents approved of became a regular part of our limited interactions. Meanwhile, grandfather Shannon continued to encourage me to follow my passions. "Your life is yours to live," he told me during one of our fishing sessions after I complained about my parents' pressure, not theirs. The final confrontation with my parents came shortly after my 18th birthday. I had been accepted to several colleges, including a prestigious architecture program that grandfather Shannon had helped me apply to. When I announced my decision to pursue architecture instead of finance, my parents exploded. "After everything we have done for you," my father shouted, his face red with anger, "this is how you repay us. By throwing away your future on some artistic fantasy, you are just like your worthless grandfather." My mother added, her voice dripping with disdain. He could have been wealthy if he had made better choices, but instead he wasted his life drawing pictures of buildings while his classmates became millionaires. I had never heard them speak so harshly about grandfather Shannon before, and something in me snapped. "He is worth 10 of either of you," I shot back. "At least he shows up. At least he cares about something other than money." The room went deadly quiet. My father pointed to the door. "If that is how you feel, you can get out. You are no longer part of this family. Do not expect another penny from us. We are done supporting someone who cannot appreciate everything we have provided." My mother added coldly, "See if your precious grandfather will pay your tuition." I packed what I could carry that night and left. The sudden reality of being completely on my own at 18 was terrifying. With the small amount of savings from summer jobs, I managed to rent a tiny studio apartment near the university. It was barely larger than a closet, with a hot plate for cooking and a mattress on the floor, but it was mine. The next few months were a brutal education in adult responsibility. I worked as a barista in the mornings, took classes during the day, and washed dishes at a restaurant at night. Every penny went toward tuition, rent, or food. There were nights I was so exhausted I fell asleep in my clothes, and mornings when I wondered if I had made a terrible mistake. The physical and emotional toll was immense. I lost weight, developed dark circles under my eyes, and sometimes found myself overcome with anxiety about making ends meet. But there were also small moments of pride in my new self-sufficiency. The first time I paid my rent entirely with money I had earned myself felt like a significant victory. Grandfather Shannon became my lifeline during this period. He never directly criticized my parents' decision, but he stepped in to provide support in ways that preserved my independence and dignity. He never offered handouts, but he found ways to help. "I have some extra groceries I cannot possibly eat. Before they go bad," he would say, arriving at my apartment with bags of food. Or, "This old textbook from my library might be useful for your studies," slipping me books I needed for classes. He helped me find my first internship at a small architecture firm where one of his old colleagues worked. The position paid little, but the experience was invaluable, and the flexible hours allowed me to continue my other jobs. "You are doing well, James," he told me, after I had been on my own for 6 months. "Better than you think. This struggle now will make you appreciate your success later." Over the next decade, I gradually built a new life. I graduated with my architecture degree and found a position at a respected firm specializing in sustainable design. I moved into a better apartment, made friends, and even started dating seriously. Through it all, my weekly dinners with grandfather Shannon continued a constant source of wisdom and encouragement. My parents and I had minimal contact during these years. We occasionally encountered each other at extended family events, like weddings or funerals, where they maintained a cold politeness. They continued to treat my career choice as a temporary phase, something I would eventually grow out of when I came to my senses. Still drawing buildings, my father asked at a cousin's wedding, his tone making it clear he considered my profession beneath him. Still making rich people richer, I responded, which ended the conversation. At family gatherings, they never missed an opportunity to highlight my cousin's financial successes while dismissing my professional accomplishments. When I mentioned a sustainable housing project I had helped design that won a regional award, my mother changed the subject to my cousin's new position at an investment firm. "That is nice, dear," she said, without interest. "But did you hear that Tyler just made junior partner? He will be making 7 figures by the time he is 30. These encounters were painful, but as the years passed, their power to hurt me diminished. I had built a life I was proud of, with or without their approval. The call about grandfather Shannon's illness came on an ordinary Tuesday. I was at work reviewing plans for a community center when my phone rang. It was Shannon's longtime housekeeper, Alice, her voice shaky with emotion. "James, you need to come to the hospital. Your grandfather has collapsed. The doctors say it is cancer, and it is advanced." I left work immediately, my heart pounding with fear. At the hospital, I found my grandfather looking smaller and frailer than I had ever seen him. The diagnosis was pancreatic cancer, already spread to his liver. The prognosis was measured in months, not years. "Do not look so worried," he told me, reaching for my hand. "I have had a good life, better than most." In the weeks that followed, I spent every available moment by his side. We had conversations deeper and more meaningful than ever before. He spoke about his life, his few regrets, and his pride in the man I had become. "You have shown more character in adversity than most show in success," he told me one evening, as the sun set outside his hospital window. "I want you to know how proud I am of you." Sometimes in his more lucid moments, he would make cryptic comments that I did not fully understand. "I have made arrangements," he would say. "Things will be made right." When I asked what he meant, he would simply smile and change the subject. Grandfather Shannon passed away peacefully on a spring morning with me by his side. The funeral was held at the small church near his estate, where he had attended services for over 60 years. The building was packed with community members whose lives he had touched, from former colleagues to families who lived in buildings he had designed. My parents arrived late, slipping into seats at the back just as the service began. I noticed them whispering to each other throughout the eulogies, their eyes occasionally darting around the room as if assessing the attendees. After years of minimal contact, their sudden appearance felt jarring and out of place. At the reception afterward, I overheard fragments of their conversation as they stood near the refreshment table. "The estate must be worth millions by now," my father murmured to my mother. "The land alone has tripled in value since the new development went in nearby." "We should speak to Brian about the will," my mother replied, referring to their attorney. "As his only child, Frank, you have clear rights." Later they approached me with an awkward attempt at warmth that felt completely foreign after years of coldness. "James, we have been thinking that we should reconnect," my father said, placing a hand on my shoulder that I had to resist the urge to shrug off. "Family should stick together in times like these." "Your grandfather would want that," my mother added with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Their sudden interest in reconciliation felt transparent and hollow. After years of indifference, they now wanted to reconnect just days after my grandfather's death. The timing was too convenient to be coincidental. A week later, we all gathered at the office of Grandfather Shannon's attorney for the reading of the will. The setting was formal and somber, with dark wood paneling and leather-bound law books lining the walls. My parents arrived in expensive suits, exchanging confident glances as we waited for the proceedings to begin. "Do not worry about the details," my mother whispered to me before the attorney entered. "We will help you understand everything afterward. These legal matters can be complicated," my father added with a patronizing smile. "It is good we are here to guide you through it." When the attorney, Mr. Goldstein, began reading the will, the room fell silent. He was an elderly man who had been my grandfather's friend for decades, and he read the formal language with practiced precision. Then he reached the distribution of assets, and everything changed. "To my grandson, James Alexander Williams, I leave my entire estate, including the family property at 1487 Oakwood Lane. All financial accounts, investments, and personal possessions with a current total value of approximately $3,500,000. The silence in the room turned electric. My parents sat frozen, their expressions of shock quickly morphing into something harder to read. "There must be some mistake," my father interrupted, leaning forward in his chair. "I am Shannon's only child." Mr. Goldstein peered at him over his reading glasses. "There is no mistake, Mr. Williams. The will is quite clear." My mother quickly composed herself, turning to me with a concerned expression that I had never seen directed my way before. "James, dear, this is a lot of responsibility to take on suddenly. Of course, we will manage it for you until you are ready." The words were spoken with such false sweetness that I nearly laughed. After 10 years of barely acknowledging my existence, they were suddenly offering to help me manage millions. "Please continue, Mr. Goldstein," I said quietly. The attorney nodded and turned to the next page. "I have an additional statement regarding the distribution of my assets," he read. "I wish to explicitly state that my son Frank Williams and his wife Diane Williams are to receive nothing from my estate, nor are they to have any involvement in the management of assets left to my grandson James. This decision is made with full awareness and is based on their treatment of James, their abandonment of family responsibilities, and their expressed disinterest in my life and values." My parents' faces went pale, then flushed with anger. But Mr. Goldstein was not finished. Furthermore, he continued, "I have instructed my attorney to provide James with a sealed letter upon my death, which contains documentation of various conversations where Frank and Diane Williams expressed their intentions regarding my estate, including plans to contest my will regardless of its contents, and to gain control over any assets left to James. This letter and accompanying recordings are to be used in the event of any legal challenge to my stated wishes." He then handed me a sealed envelope. "Your grandfather asked me to give you this privately, but in light of the circumstances, perhaps it is best delivered now." My father stood up abruptly. "This is outrageous. Shannon was clearly not of sound mind. We will contest this immediately." The attorney remained calm. "Mr. Williams, your father, anticipated that response. The will has been verified by multiple medical professionals and witnesses. Additionally, he made video testimony explaining his decisions in detail. I would strongly advise against a costly legal challenge that would only deplete the estate's resources." My mother turned to me, her expression suddenly pleading. "James, you cannot possibly believe this is fair. After everything we have done for you, raising you, providing for you." The absurdity of her statement struck me speechless. After everything they had done, after throwing me out at 18, after years of treating me like a stranger, I think we are done here. I finally said, rising from my chair. "Thank you, Mr. Goldstein. I will contact your office later this week to discuss next steps." My parents' shock gave way to fury. "You ungrateful little," my father began. But Mr. Goldstein cut him off. "That will be quite enough, Mr. Williams. I suggest you leave before you say something that might be used against you in any future proceedings." As they gathered their things to leave, my mother made one last attempt. "James, please. We are still your parents. We can work this out as a family." I looked at her for a long moment, remembering all the birthdays, school events, and important moments they had missed. "We stopped being a family the day you told me I was no longer part of it," I said quietly. "Please, respect Grandfather Shannon's wishes." They left, my father slamming the door so hard the law books trembled on their shelves. The months following the will reading were chaotic. As Grandfather Shannon had predicted, my parents immediately filed to contest the will. They claimed he had been mentally incompetent and that I had somehow manipulated him in his final years. Their claims fell apart quickly. Grandfather Shannon had been meticulous in his preparations. His video testimony, recorded 6 months before his death and witnessed by his doctor and attorney, clearly showed him to be sharp and fully aware of his decisions. He had detailed his reasoning, citing specific incidents of my parents' behavior over the years and expressing his wish to provide for the grandson they had abandoned. The sealed letter he left me contained even more damning evidence. There were transcripts of conversations my parents had with various family members discussing how they would get control of Shannon's money after his death. There were copies of emails where they had contacted real estate agents about selling the estate once the old man is gone. Most shockingly, there was a recording of a conversation they had with my grandfather himself, not knowing he was recording, where they dismissed his concerns about their treatment of me and made it clear they felt entitled to his estate, regardless of his wishes. "Your father and mother visited me 6 months before I got sick," his letter explained. "They thought I was becoming forgetful because I missed a family dinner. They spoke openly about their plans, assuming I would not remember or understand. I may be old, James, but I am not a fool." The legal challenge was dismissed within 3 months. The judge was particularly unimpressed by my parents' claim of having a close relationship with grandfather Shannon when they could not even name his doctors or what medications he took. Their defeat in court led to increasingly desperate measures. They attempted to turn other family members against me, claiming I had somehow tricked grandfather Shannon. When that failed, they tried appealing directly to me, showing up at my apartment unannounced. "We are still family," my mother pleaded. "We made mistakes, but surely you do not want to destroy your relationship with your parents over money." "This is not about money," I told her. "This is about respect for grandfather Shannon's wishes. The same respect you never showed him when he was alive." Dealing with the inheritance itself was overwhelming at first. The estate included not just the property, but also investment accounts, retirement funds, and various other assets. Mr. H. Os. Goldstein connected me with a financial advisor who had worked with my grandfather for years, a forthright woman named Sarah, who helped me understand my options without pushing her own agenda. I decided to keep the estate rather than sell it. It had been in our family for generations, and I could not bear the thought of strangers living there. Instead, I moved into the main house, finding comfort in being surrounded by memories of my grandfather. Many of his architectural books and drawings were still in his study, and I spent evenings going through them, feeling connected to both his personal and professional legacy. With Sarah's guidance, I established a scholarship foundation in grandfather Shannon's name, providing financial support to architecture students from low-income backgrounds. It felt like the perfect way to honor him, combining his profession with his belief in helping others. I also took a risk and left my position at the architecture firm to start my own small practice. I focused on sustainable community buildings, affordable housing, and renovations of historic structures, all values grandfather Shannon had instilled in me. The work was challenging but deeply satisfying. Despite the positive changes in my life, I struggled with complicated emotions. There was guilt, even though I knew I had done nothing wrong. There was anger at my parents that sometimes threatened to consume me. There was fear that I would somehow mishandle the responsibility I had been given. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Landon, who specialized in family trauma. Our sessions helped me process the complex emotions surrounding my inheritance and my relationship with my parents. "Your grandfather trusted you with his legacy because he saw your character, Dr." Landon told me during one session. That trust was not misplaced. Slowly, I found my way to a place of peace. I built a new family of close friends who supported me without agenda. I dated a kind-hearted teacher named Amanda who saw me for who I was, not what I owned. I found purpose in my work and the scholarship foundation. Almost 2 years after grandfather Shannon's death, my parents appeared at my door again. They looked different, somehow diminished. I later learned they had made several bad investments and were facing financial difficulties. "We have done a lot of thinking," my father said, his voice lacking its usual confidence. "We handled everything wrong. With you, with your grandfather. We are sorry." For a moment, I almost believed them. Then my mother added, We thought perhaps we could start fresh. Maybe you could help us out a little as family. Nothing major, just to get us back on our feet. And there it was. Even their apology was transactional, focused on what they could get from me. It was perhaps the most valuable lesson Grandfather Shannon had left me, though not the one he had intended. The ability to recognize when relationships are based on genuine care versus personal gain. I cannot do that, I said firmly. Not because I do not have the resources, but because it would not actually help either of us heal. I wish you well, but I need to maintain these boundaries. It was one of the most difficult conversations of my life, but also one of the most empowering. For the first time, I truly understood that family is defined by love and respect, not blood relation. Today, I live in the restored family estate that now truly feels like home. The architecture firm I founded has grown to 15 employees, all committed to creating spaces that serve communities rather than just profits. The Scholarship Foundation has helped dozens of students pursue their dreams without the financial strain I experienced. Sometimes in the evening, I sit by the same pond where Grandfather Shannon taught me to fish, reflecting on the twisting path that brought me here. I think about his lessons on integrity, generosity, and finding value beyond material wealth. I realize now that the true inheritance he left me was not the estate or the money, but the example of how to live with purpose and character. What does family really mean to you? Is it defined by blood or by the people who stand by you when it matters most? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you found meaning in this story, please like and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences about family betrayal and finding your own path. Share with someone who might need a reminder that sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we are born into. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that true wealth is measured not by what we have, but by how we treat others.